Hi friends, I'm Kathryn with Research Rockstar. Thanks for joining me here today. Today I'd like to talk about a trend that I'm seeing in the market research world that I think is really interesting, and frankly it also has some pretty big implications, if it's true. So let's dive into this a little bit. The trend that I've been seeing is what I am calling, for lack of a better term, hardcore qualitative research. That is, if I look at the types of research that I see that's being done in qualitative these days, we seem to be seeing a shift towards more rigor. So more rigor in terms of the specific qualitative methodology and how it's executed, but also rigor in terms of how the qualitative research is then analyzed and interpreted and reported for application. So to me, if I look at the projects that I've been seeing and thinking about my recent conversations with Research Rockstar students and clients, I would say that there's some evidence that if we compare what qualitative research projects look like a few years ago to what they look like today, that they've really changed. And I think that for many of us, part of that change does have to do with the methodology, right? So one of the things, of course, is a few years ago, as a percent of all of the qualitative research projects that I was talking to people about and was privy to, a few years ago, still a majority of those projects were focus groups. Now, that included a mix of both traditional in-person focus groups and online focus groups. Now, thinking about today, more recently, the last few months, I'm seeing a lot less use of focus groups. I'm sorry. And this is what I'm observing. You may be having a different experience, but I'm observing as a percentage of the qualitative that's being done, less focus groups and more methodologies that might be considered more rigorous. So what do I mean by that? Well, when I'm seeing qualitative research done these days, I'm seeing that there's demand for qualitative research that is either extremely pure in terms of being immersive and observational. So that kind of drives people towards ethnographic research, which is great. I've always been a fan of ethnography, but a lot of clients that I worked with over the years frankly didn't have the time or budget to do true immersive ethnographic research. But now there seems to be renewed interest. Interestingly, in terms of methodologies and being more rigorous, I also see more rigor in terms of interest in qualitative research that can be scaled, right? So scalable qualitative research. Now, I know that some of us that do qualitative research are a little uncomfortable because when we hear people talk about qualitative research at scale, we become concerned that they're really trying to quantify it in a way that could be misrepresentative, could be really inaccurate. That's a whole conversation. But I think the trend is there, that a lot of the interest in qualitative research these days is specifically for qualitative research projects that can scale. So I feel like we're seeing more rigor in terms of methodology choices. I also see evidence of more rigor in terms of the analysis that's done. Part of this has to do with the automation and improvements in automation related to, say, automatic analysis of text and increasingly now video qualitative sources. So whether it's text from text submissions on open-ended questions on surveys or other forms of text that we may be collecting from online focus group transcripts or in-depth interview transcripts, etc., or if it's analyzing all the unstructured video data that we now get from various platforms like Vox Pop Me. So what's interesting there to me is there's this interest not only in improving the rigor with which we do our methodologies and collect our data, but also more rigor in terms of wanting to automate the analysis of unstructured data. I also see evidence that when we are analyzing qualitative data, that there's a lot more interest in things like having dashboards and having alternative ways of reporting it, not just a short top-line memo, but something that helps to make it a little bit more authentic for the ultimate client, the ultimate business user. So we're also seeing not only the analysis may be getting amped up, but also the reporting options as well. So I'm curious if some of you are seeing this trend too. Are you seeing the mix of qualitative research methodologies shifting, again, perhaps to be more pure in terms of ethnographic research or more scalable and automatic in terms of qualitative methods, online qualitative methods, mobile ethnography, tools like DScout and Indemo and 2020 and so forth, or other types of online projective platforms and exercises. So I'm wondering if other people are also seeing the shift in the mix of projects that are being done. But also, I'd love to know if you're also seeing some increased demand for more sophisticated analysis and actual reporting of qualitative data, right? We know qualitative data can be really complex. Is there a way for us to ramp up the reporting on it? Now, okay, maybe you don't believe me. Maybe you're watching this and you're saying, Kathryn, I don't believe you. I don't really think this is a trend. Maybe you're seeing a bunch of outliers. You know what? That's possible. That's certainly possible. So what I did is I went on to job postings. I went on to Indeed, which is a very large repository of job openings, and I looked at job openings posted in the last 30 days. And what I found was really interesting. There are job postings out there where it's not necessarily that they're looking for, say, an ethnographer, but they're openings that require having expertise in what I would call rigorous qualitative research as well as rigorous quantitative research. I find this really interesting. So let's take a look at one of the job postings that I actually just picked up today. So this is for a very interesting title, Customer Insight and Growth Data-Driven Consultant. This is a position with Accenture, which of course is a big consulting company. Now, I won't go through the whole job description with you, but there is a couple of things I want to point out. What they're looking for what they're looking for here is somebody who can demonstrate the ability to craft qualitative value propositions and quantitative business cases. Now, as a market researcher, they're speaking my language, right? So this sounds really interesting. It sounds like a position that a market research professional would really be qualified for. Now, not surprisingly, these days, we do have a lot of emphasis on quantitative skills and a lot of job openings. So if we look a little bit further into the job description, we do see that that comes up. So the second part of the job description includes things like having experience with one or more of the following. And yes, they do mention focus groups, but they do specify ethnographic analysis, of course, primary research, but then all of the things that might have been sort of outside the realm of market research up until a couple of years ago, when we were primarily just, quantitative research was pretty much synonymous with survey research for most of us up until a couple of years ago. But look at all these quantitative skills too. This is really interesting. So I see this. You see these positions where they're looking for people who have pretty high-end quantitative and data analysis skills, but also understand qualitative research. Now, I don't think that what they're saying here is that you need to know how to do all of the things here yourself, hands-on, start to finish. To me, this is a situation that brings back this idea of what McKinsey calls a data translator, or what I've referred to in some previous episodes as a data agnostic advisor, right? They need somebody who knows about a lot of different methodologies and data sources so they can recommend the right one for specific business needs. It's a wide variety of things. And they all seem pretty rigorous to me. Related to this is I especially see these combinations of really, rigorous, hardcore qualitative research methods and quantitative data analysis in positions that are related to customer experience, CX. So if you look at current CX job openings, you'll see similarly that there's interesting combinations in many cases of really, quantitative data analysis skills, but also really rich qualitative research, which I think is fantastic. So that's so looking at what's going on in terms of job postings is, to me, just another sign that there does seem to be a trend, and that especially in this case, embracing data analytics, embracing multiple sources of data, especially quantitative data, doesn't mean that there's less interest in qualitative research. Indeed, as we see in this one example, but this is representative, of many job postings that are out there, we do see a lot of cases where the employers are looking for people who actually have both sets of skills. So I know that sometimes we feel like big data is killing qualitative research. I really don't think that's the case. So let's take a look. Let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into that. If we ask, why is hardcore qualitative a thing? So if you buy into the idea that there is a trend towards qualitative research that's either more rigorous in terms of the methodology, or it's the scale and automation of the methodology, or more rigorous in terms of the analysis and reporting, why is this happening? What's pushing this trend towards what I'm calling hardcore qual? I really think that this is being driven by big data. Now, I'm using the term big data broadly to just refer to the fact that in most organizations these days, they routinely have access to a wide variety of internal and external data sources that they use for various purposes. Those data sources might be transactional data, behavioral data, online behavior data, social media data, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's lots of data sources. But as organizations have really embraced this idea of data-driven decision-making, a lot of them have really amped up the data fluency of their business leaders. And so, these folks have really gotten educated over the last few years in terms of data reliability. And they're also very aware, there's widespread awareness of the limitations of certain research methodologies. So what does this all imply for us? I think we'll see some interesting things going on. First of all, I do think that we're seeing evidence of this already in job titles and job descriptions, and I think we'll continue to see that. I think we're going to see some very interesting trends in terms of the skills that are specified in job postings that do reflect an interest in really rigorous qualitative research. I also expect we'll see a lot of interesting investment in tools in this space, especially for those organizations that are doing both the immersive in-person ethnographic research as well as the scalable, automated, online qualitative research. I think we're going to see some really interesting, continued interesting development in tools that can really aid in the analysis and reporting and even dashboarding of that complex qualitative data. So I think that we'll see some interesting things there. And in general, I think what we'll find is that as we go forward, the fact that we are getting organizations investing so much in, quote, big data doesn't mean that they're abandoning qualitative. It's just that they might be looking at qualitative research a little bit differently. So I look forward to hearing what other folks think. Please let me know if you're seeing the same trends, if you agree, if you disagree. I always enjoy differences of opinion. And if you have enjoyed this conversation, it is available both on YouTube and on iTunes as an audio-only podcast. Please do like and subscribe. The more people who like the conversations, the longer I'll keep them going. And not to be too greedy, but please do also review. The more reviews we get, the better things go, because then we actually come up in the YouTube and the iTunes searches when people look for market research. Right now, when people go to enter market research into iTunes and YouTube, they tend to get a lot of content on stock market research. So I'm hoping to move it over to market research and insights. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.